Hey guys, tonight we're embarking on yet another meticulously curated journey into the heart of a decade that continues to whisper its secrets to us, the American 1950s. We've already unearthed some of its more prominent treasures, but tonight, our archaeological dig into nostalgia goes deeper, seeking out those slightly more elusive artifacts of everyday life. The kind of memories that might evoke a sudden, unexpected pang of recognition, a forgotten scent, a half-remembered tune. Imagine a world where the future seemed to arrive on whirring gears and in bubbling tubes of colored light, where new inventions promise to transform daily drudgery into leisure, and where the greatest adventure might be found in your own basement. You're about to step into a landscape of earnest innovation, profound social shifts, and the quiet, persistent hum of a nation reinventing itself. Tonight's reality check? You probably wouldn't survive the sheer, unadulterated novelty of it all. The constant introduction of things never before seen, the rapid changes in how people lived, worked, and played. It would be like living in a perpetual beta test, thrilling but also utterly disorienting. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, please do share your location and local time in the comments below. I truly love seeing how far and wide our sleepy historical explorations reach. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first encounter with the transformative spirit of the 1950s isn't in a grand public space, but within the humble confines of a suburban laundry room or kitchen. Here you witness a domestic revolution, a marvel of engineering that promised to liberate countless hours from backbreaking toil. The automatic washing machine. For generations, laundry day had been an arduous, all-day affair involving tubs, washboards, wringers, and clotheslines. But now behold, a gleaming enamel box, perhaps with a distinctive round window on the front or a top-loading lid, stands ready to perform this Herculean task with the mere flick of a switch and the turn of a dial. The widespread adoption of automatic washing machines in American homes during the 1950s is a significant historical marker of post-war prosperity and changing domestic labor patterns. Brands like Whirlpool, Maytag, and Kenmore became household names, their advertisements promising wash day bliss and an end to Blue Mondays. Imagine the scene: a homemaker, perhaps your grandmother or great-grandmother, carefully loading soiled clothes into the machine, adding powdered soap, no liquid detergents yet for most, and then selecting the water temperature and wash cycle. The machine would then spring to life with a series of satisfying clunks, whirs, and sloshing sounds, agitating, rinsing, and spin-drying the clothes with an almost magical efficiency. For someone accustomed to the sheer physical effort of hand washing or using a wringer washer, this was nothing short of miraculous. It freed up hours, days even, that could be devoted to other pursuits, or, as was often the case, to meeting ever higher standards of household cleanliness and child rearing. The joke back then was that the first time some families got an automatic washer, they pulled up chairs and watched the entire first cycle like it was a movie premiere. Historians still debate the true extent to which household appliances like the automatic washer liberated women versus simply shifting the nature of their domestic labor and raising societal expectations for cleanliness and household management. Did it create more leisure time, or just more time for other, equally demanding domestic tasks? It's a complex question with no easy answers. These early automatic washers weren't without their quirks. They could be noisy, sometimes walk across the floor during an unbalanced spin cycle, and occasionally overflow if not loaded or operated correctly. But the sheer relief they offered from the drudgery of traditional laundry was undeniable. A quirky tidbit related to early washing machines was the sheer variety of features and innovations touted by manufacturers. Some had special cycles for delicate fabrics, a relative term back then. Others boasted about their suds-saving capabilities, and the design aesthetics could range from utilitarian to almost space age, with chrome accents and futuristic-looking control panels. You, with your high-efficiency, smart app-controlled washer and dryer, would marvel at the robust simplicity of these pioneering machines. The heft of the lid, the satisfying click of the dials, the sheer, unadulterated power of a machine dedicated to one primary, transformative task. It's a reminder that sometimes the most profound revolutions happen not on battlefields, but in the quiet corners of everyday life, one load of laundry at a time. You'd probably be tempted to just sit and watch it go through a cycle, mesmerized by the swirling water and the promise of a future with slightly less scrubbing. Having witnessed the domestic marvel of the automatic washer, your next immersion into the social fabric of the 1950s might involve a piece of technology that was both a lifeline and a potential source of endless neighborhood drama: the party line telephone. In many suburban and rural areas, and even in some city neighborhoods, individual private telephone lines were still a luxury. Instead, several households would share a single line, a system known as a party line. This wasn't a non-stop celebration, mind you. It was a shared resource that required a unique set of social skills, etiquette, and a healthy dose of patience. Or for some, a mischievous curiosity. Each home on the party line had a distinct ring pattern. Perhaps 2 short rings for the Smiths, 1 long and 1 short for the Joneses, and 3 short rings for your household. Learning to recognize your own ring amidst the cacophony of others was a crucial skill. If you heard the phone ring with someone else's pattern, you were honor-bound not to pick it up. Or at least, you were supposed to be. The reality, of course, was that listening in on your neighbor's conversations was a common, if officially frowned upon, pastime. This was the pre-internet, pre-social media era of hyperlocal, real-time gossip. If Mrs. Abernathy was having a heated discussion with her sister about cousin Mildred's scandalous new beau, chances are several other people on the line were quietly, breathlessly, absorbing every juicy detail. This phenomenon was so widespread that telephone companies often printed admonishments in their directories like, "Party line courtesy is important," or "Please don't listen in, it may be your conversation next." The prevalence of telephone party lines in mid-20th century America and the associated etiquette and breaches thereof is a well-documented aspect of telecommunications history and social life. It fostered a strange kind of involuntary intimacy where your neighbors knew far more about your personal life than you might have preferred. Making a call required its own set of protocols. First, you had to lift the receiver and listen to make sure the line wasn't already in use. If it was, you'd hear your neighbors chatting away, and you'd have to gently hang up and try again later. This could be incredibly frustrating if you had an urgent call to make, and Mrs. Peterson was deep into a lengthy monologue about her prize-winning roses. There was an unwritten rule about not monopolizing the line, but lengthy was a subjective term. Sometimes, if the need was urgent, you could break in politely. "Excuse me, I need to make an emergency call." Most people would oblige, but not always without a huff. Historians still debate whether the party line system fostered a stronger sense of local community and shared experience, or if it was primarily a source of frustration, intrusion, and social tension. Did it bring neighbors closer or just make them more aware of each other's annoying habits? A quirky and often humorous aspect of party lines was the rubbernecking. a term more commonly associated with slowing down to look at car accidents, but applicable here as ear necking. People developed an almost sixth sense for when an interesting conversation might be unfolding. The telltale sign was often a series of rapid clicks as multiple neighbors stealthily lifted their receivers to eavesdrop. You, accustomed to the absolute privacy of your smartphone and individual landline, if you even still have one, would find the system utterly baffling and intrusive. Imagine trying to arrange a secret surprise party or discuss a confidential matter knowing that half the block might be tuned in. The self-censorship would be immense. You'd probably develop a complex system of code words with your friends, or resort to meeting in person for any conversation that wasn't fit for public consumption. It's a potent reminder that privacy, as we understand it today, was a very different concept in the analog, interconnected, in a very literal sense, world of the 1950s. You might even find yourself accidentally picking up on Mrs. Gable's ring, your curiosity momentarily outweighing your manners. Moving from the occasionally too public realm of the party line telephone, let's dim the lights and gather in the living room for another quintessential 1950s family ritual, watching television. But this isn't the multi-channel, on-demand, high-definition experience you know. This is the early days of TV, a flickering black and white window onto a very limited world, often accompanied by a very specific piece of furniture, the TV tray. As television sets, those bulky wooden cabinets with tiny, often rounded screens became more common in American homes throughout the 1950s. They began to reshape family routines, particularly around mealtime. The introduction and popularization of the TV dinner by Swanson in 1953, a pre-packaged frozen meal in a segmented aluminum tray, perfectly coincided with the rise of television viewing, allowing families to eat without missing their favorite programs. This led to the widespread use of TV trays, lightweight, foldable tables, often with brightly colored or patterned tops, designed to hold a meal and a drink while you sat comfortably in your armchair or on the sofa. The broadcast day itself was limited. Programming often didn't start until late afternoon or early evening, and stations would sign off late at night, typically after playing the national anthem, leaving only a test pattern or static, the dreaded snow, on the screen. There were usually only 3 or 4 channels to choose from: ABC, CBS, NBC, and perhaps a local independent station. This scarcity of choice meant that popular shows, I Love Lucy, The Ed Sullivan Show, Gunsmoke, Milton Berle's Texaco Star Theater, were massive cultural events watched by a huge percentage of the population simultaneously. If you missed an episode, you missed it. There was no DVR, no streaming replay. The next day at school or work, everyone would be talking about what happened on last night's big show, and you'd be out of the loop. This shared viewing experience created a common cultural currency, a set of references and inside jokes that nearly everyone understood. The TV set itself was often the focal point of the living room, a piece of furniture as much as an appliance. Families would gather around it, sometimes with the lights dimmed to enhance the viewing experience, and perhaps to hide the fact that the picture quality wasn't always stellar. The images were grainy, the sound sometimes tinny, and rabbit ear antennas often required constant adjustment to get a clear signal. Someone, usually dad or an older sibling, would be tasked with fiddling with the antenna, contorting it into strange positions, while everyone else shouted, "A little to the left! No, back to the right!" Historians still debate the overall impact of early television on family life and social interaction, whether it brought families together in a shared activity or began the trend of more passive, individualized entertainment consumption that fragmented conversation in traditional mealtimes. Was it a new hearth or a new distraction? A quirky And now almost unbelievable feature of early television was the test pattern. During off-air hours or when technical difficulties arose, stations would broadcast a static image, often a complex design of lines, circles, and sometimes an image of a Native American chief or a bullseye. This pattern was used by technicians and home viewers to adjust the picture quality of their sets: focus, contrast, brightness. Children of the era might recall staring at these mesmerizing, unchanging patterns, a strange silent interlude in the otherwise exciting world of television. You, accustomed to an endless stream of content 24/7, would find the idea of scheduled programming, limited choices, and the TV actually going off the air utterly bizarre. You'd probably keep flipping channels, convinced there must be something else on, before realizing that the entertainment for the evening had officially concluded, leaving you with your TV dinner remnants and the ghostly glow of the test pattern. You might even try to adjust the rabbit ears out of sheer, ingrained habit, even though you're just imagining it. After an evening spent huddled around the flickering glow of the television set, perhaps with the lingering scent of a Salisbury steak TV dinner in the air, your journey into 1950s nostalgia might take you downtown, to a place that was more than just a store, the grand department store. In an era before sprawling suburban malls and ubiquitous online shopping, the downtown department store, names like Macy's, Marshall Field's, Gimbel's, or Sears, Roebuck & Co., was a veritable palace of commerce and a significant social hub. These weren't just places to buy things, they were destinations, often occupying massive, architecturally impressive buildings, offering a dazzling array of goods and services under one roof, from clothing and furniture to appliances and toys. And one of the charming, now largely vanished, features of these multi-story emporiums was the uniformed elevator operator. Instead of simply pressing a button yourself, you would step into a beautifully appointed elevator, often with polished wood paneling and brass fittings, and a neatly dressed operator, usually a woman in a smart uniform and sometimes white gloves, would greet you. "Going up," she might announce before smoothly closing the ornate metal gate and expertly guiding the elevator to your desired floor, announcing each department as you arrived. Third floor, ladies' apparel, lingerie, and millinery. This personal touch extended to many aspects of the department store experience. Sales clerks were often knowledgeable about their specific products and offered attentive, if sometimes formal, service. There might be a tea room or a restaurant within the store, a place for weary shoppers to rest and refresh themselves. During the holiday season, these stores would transform into winter wonderlands. The elaborate Christmas window displays in the in-store Santa's Village or Toyland in major department stores became cherished traditions, drawing families downtown for a magical experience. Children would line up, their eyes wide with wonder, for a chance to sit on Santa's lap, a department store Santa, of course, and whisper their Christmas wishes. The level of theatricality and effort put into these seasonal displays was extraordinary, creating lasting memories for generations. But it wasn't just about Christmas. Department stores hosted fashion shows, cooking demonstrations, and celebrity appearances. They were places to see and be seen, a part of the social fabric of the city. The evolution of the department store in the 20th century reflects broader changes in consumer culture, urban development, and marketing practices, with the 1950s often seen as a kind of golden age for the grand downtown emporium, before the rise of suburban shopping malls began to shift the retail landscape. You could buy your school clothes, choose a wedding gift, get your hair done, and perhaps even take a photograph in a coin-operated photo booth, all within the same building. A quirky and rather delightful aspect of some larger department stores was the presence of a lost and found department that sometimes handled lost children as well. If a child became separated from their parents amidst the bustling crowds, they might be taken to a designated area where a kindly store employee would look after them until they could be reunited. Imagine the slight panic, then the reassurance of being in a safe, if unfamiliar place, perhaps given a lollipop while waiting. You, accustomed to the often impersonal nature of modern retail, would be struck by the sheer scale, the elegance, and the level of personal service. Riding in an elevator operated by a person, being guided through a wonderland of merchandise, the sense of occasion, it would feel like stepping into a scene from an old movie. You'd probably marvel at the millinery department with its elaborate hats, wondering when was the last time you saw anyone wear gloves just for shopping. It's a reminder of a time when shopping could be an experience, not just a transaction. Descending from the multi-floored wonder of the downtown department store, perhaps with a small, treasured purchase in hand, your nostalgic exploration might lead you into the heart of many a 1950s American home, specifically to a domain of intricate planning and boundless imagination. The basement model railroad empire. For countless boys and a good number of men, and some girls and women too, the 1950s were a golden age for model railroading. This wasn't just about a simple circle of track and a toy train. Oh no, this was about creating entire miniature worlds, elaborate landscapes meticulously crafted with plaster mountains, tiny trees made of lichen, and intricately detailed model buildings representing towns, farms, and industries. And at the heart of it all were the trains themselves, gleaming O-scale or HO-scale locomotives and rolling stock from iconic brands like Lionel or American Flyer, their electric motors humming as they navigated the complex track layouts. The popularity of model railroading as a hobby surged in the post-war years, fueled by a fascination with railroads, increased leisure time for some, and the availability of increasingly sophisticated and realistic model kits. Imagine descending into a basement, the air cool and perhaps smelling faintly of damp concrete, sawdust, and model paint. Before you, sprawling across one or more large plywood tables, is a miniature kingdom. Tiny streets are lined with model cars from the era, little figures are posed in various activities, and a complex network of tracks, switches, and sidings winds its way through tunnels, over trestle bridges, and past miniature train stations. The creator of this world, perhaps your father or grandfather, would be at the controls, a complex panel of transformers, wires, and switches, carefully orchestrating the movement of multiple trains. There was a deep satisfaction in the planning, the construction, and the operation of these miniature railroads. It required patience, skill in carpentry, electronics, and artistry, and a keen attention to detail. Many enthusiasts aim for historical accuracy, modeling specific railroads or eras, while others let their imaginations run wild, creating fantastical landscapes. These layouts were often a source of immense pride and a focal point for family and neighborhood gatherings. Friends would come over to admire the latest additions, to run their own trains on the layout, or to help with construction. For children, it was a magical world come to life, a place where they could watch tiny trains chug through landscapes they helped create, or simply dream of far-off destinations. Historians still debate the cultural significance of hobbies like model railroading in the 1950s, whether they represented a nostalgic longing for a vanishing era of steam locomotion, a healthy outlet for creativity and technical skill, or a form of escapism from the anxieties of the Cold War world. Was it a way to control a small piece of a rapidly changing world, or simply a deeply engaging and rewarding pastime? A quirky and often essential element of many model railroad layouts was the scenery. Enthusiasts used a variety of materials, plaster-soaked paper towels for mountains, dyed sawdust or lichen for grass and trees, tiny pieces of gravel for ballast along the tracks. The creation of realistic, or at least evocative, scenery was an art form in itself. You might see a tiny replica of the local diner or a miniature version of the family car parked outside a model house. You, perhaps more familiar with video games that offer instantly generated vast landscapes, would be astounded by the sheer dedication and craftsmanship involved in building these tangible miniature worlds. The hours spent patiently laying track, wiring switches, painting tiny figures, and coaxing lichen to look like a convincing forest. It was a labor of love. You'd probably find yourself mesmerized by the sight of a tiny steam locomotive, puffing realistic model smoke, pulling a long line of freight cars through a meticulously crafted valley. It's a potent reminder of a time when imagination and hands-on creativity could build entire empires, right there in the family basement. Leaving the meticulously crafted miniature worlds of the basement model railroad, our journey through 1950s nostalgia takes a slightly less comfortable, but undeniably memorable turn. We're entering the realm of common childhood illnesses, those rites of passage that, in an era before widespread and comprehensive vaccination schedules for many of them, were an almost inevitable part of growing up. Measles, mumps, and chickenpox. Forget the quick trip to the pediatrician for a preventative shot. For many children in the 1950s, contracting these illnesses was simply a matter of when, not if. And when one child in a neighborhood or classroom came down with, say, chickenpox, it often spread like wildfire, leading to a cascade of itchy, spotty, and generally miserable youngsters. The routine nature of childhood diseases like measles, mumps, and rubella, German measles, before the development and widespread use of effective vaccines in the 1960s and beyond, meant that most children experienced them, often with significant discomfort and the risk of serious complications. Imagine the scene. You or a child you know wake up one morning feeling a bit off, perhaps with a slight fever. Then the telltale spots begin to appear, the itchy, fluid-filled blisters of chickenpox or the distinctive rash of measles. This meant quarantine. You were confined to your home, often to your bed for a week or more, to prevent further spread. The boredom could be immense, relieved only by books, radio programs, or perhaps a sympathetic parent reading stories. For chickenpox, the primary torment was the relentless itching. Calamine lotion, that chalky pink liquid, was daubed liberally onto every spot, offering temporary, if messy, relief. Oatmeal baths were another common remedy. The cardinal rule was, don't scratch. Easier said than done, and often resulting in lifelong tiny scars as a memento. Mumps brought its own unique misery, with swollen glands in the neck making it painful to swallow, leading to a diet of soft foods and a general feeling of being a chipmunk with a sore throat. One common joke was that the only good thing about mumps was that you got to eat a lot of ice cream. Measles was often more severe, with a high fever, cough, runny nose, and red, watery eyes, followed by a characteristic rash. It could also lead to serious complications like pneumonia or encephalitis. These weren't just minor inconveniences, they were illnesses that parents genuinely worried about. Historians of medicine and public health often point to the pre-vaccine era as a stark reminder of the burden of infectious diseases on families and society, highlighting the transformative impact of immunization programs. The collective memory of these illnesses is strong for those who lived through it. A quirky and rather pragmatic aspect of this era was the sometimes intentional exposure of children to these illnesses, particularly chickenpox. If one child in a family or neighborhood got it, parents might deliberately bring their other healthy children over to play with the infected child, hoping they would contract it and get it over with while they were young, as the diseases were often thought to be milder in childhood. though this wasn't always true and complications could still occur. These pox parties, as they were informally known, seem almost unthinkable today, a testament to how much our approach to childhood illness has changed thanks to vaccines. You, with your access to a vast array of preventative health care, would find this casual acceptance of contagious disease and the often rudimentary home care involved quite alarming. The reliance on folk remedies, the long periods of isolation, the genuine fear of complications, it would be a stark contrast to your experience. You'd probably slather yourself in imaginary calamine lotion just thinking about it, and feel a profound sense of gratitude for the scientific advancements that have made these once common miseries largely preventable. Emerging from the slightly feverish haze of common childhood illnesses, let's fast forward a few years in our 1950s counterpart's life to the equally intense, if somewhat more romantic, fevers of adolescence. We're stepping into the world of teenage romance, 1950s style, a realm of carefully prescribed rituals, heartfelt declarations, and tangible symbols of affection, particularly the tradition of going steady. This wasn't just casual dating. Going steady was a public declaration of a serious, exclusive relationship. It meant you were a couple, off the market, and your social lives revolved around each other. And a key part of this ritual often involved the exchange of a symbolic item. Typically, the boy would give the girl his class ring, a Letterman sweater pin, or perhaps an ID bracelet engraved with his initials. She, in turn, might wear his ring on a chain around her neck if it was too big for her finger, a visible sign to the world that she was his girl. The phenomenon of going steady among American teenagers became particularly prominent in the post-war 1950s, reflecting both a desire for security and companionship in an uncertain world, and the influence of a burgeoning youth culture with its own distinct social codes. These symbols were incredibly important. Losing your boyfriend's ring was a catastrophe of epic proportions. Having it conspicuously displayed was a source of pride and status among peers. The rituals surrounding dating were also more formal than today's often casual hangouts. A boy would call a girl on the party line, telephone, formally ask her out for a specific event, a movie, a school dance, a trip to the local drive-in, and would be expected to pick her up, meet her parents, and have her home by a strictly enforced curfew. Necking or making out in a parked car at a local lover's lane was a clandestine, thrilling, and often slightly nerve-wracking rite of passage, always with one eye on the clock and an ear out for the local police patrol or an overly curious parent. The sock hops and school dances we've touched on before were prime venues for these romantic rituals to play out. Slow dances were particularly significant, a chance for couples to hold each other close, though not too close if chaperones were watching, while swaying to sentimental ballads by artists like Pat Boone, Perry Como, or the Platters. The last dance of the evening was often imbued with a special romantic weight. Historians and sociologists still explore the complex interplay of societal expectations, peer pressure, and genuine romantic feeling that shaped teenage dating rituals in the 1950s. Was going steady a rehearsal for early marriage, which was common at the time, a way to navigate the confusing waters of adolescent sexuality within prescribed boundaries, or simply a part of the fun of being young? A quirky and often angst-ridden aspect of 1950s teen romance was the breakup. If a couple decided to stop going steady, the symbolic items had to be returned. This could be a highly dramatic and public event, especially in the close-knit world of a high school. The sight of a girl no longer wearing her boyfriend's ring or pin was an immediate signal to the social grapevine that the relationship was over. You, with your understanding of modern dating apps, talking stages, and ghosting, would find the formality and public nature of these teenage romantic commitments quite extraordinary. The idea of your relationship status being so visibly broadcast through a piece of jewelry or a shared milkshake at the soda fountain would feel both quaint and incredibly high pressure. You'd probably feel a wave of sympathy for these young hearts navigating such intense emotions with such public symbols, all while trying to master the steps to the latest dance craze and avoid getting a bad grade in algebra. It's a potent reminder that while the customs may change, the dizzying, delightful, and occasionally devastating experience of young love is timeless. While teenagers were navigating the exciting, if sometimes perilous waters of going steady, a different kind of delivery service was making its rounds in many neighborhoods, bringing a refreshing fizz and a touch of old-world charm to 1950s households. The Seltzer Man. Long before home carbonation systems or the ubiquity of canned and bottled sparkling water, many families, particularly in urban areas with strong Eastern European immigrant traditions, relied on the regular delivery of seltzer water in heavy reusable glass bottles with distinctive siphon tops. This wasn't just plain water. This was highly carbonated, invigorating bubbly water, perfect for mixing with flavored syrups, like those from the soda fountain, to create homemade sodas, for adding a spritz to a cocktail, or simply for enjoying as a zesty, thirst-quenching beverage. The seltzer delivery man, often driving a truck laden with clanking wooden crates filled with these iconic bottles, was a familiar and welcome sight in many communities, a tradition that had its roots in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, but continued robustly through the 1950s. The seltzer bottles themselves were marvels of sturdy design. Made of thick glass, often blue or green, they were built to withstand the pressure of the carbonation and featured a metal siphon mechanism on top. When you pressed the lever, a powerful stream of seltzer would shoot out. Woe betide anyone who accidentally aimed it in the wrong direction. The seltzer man would typically deliver a fresh supply of full bottles and pick up the empties, which would then be returned to the bottling plant to be washed, refilled, and sent out again. It was an early example of a sustainable, closed-loop delivery system. You'd hear the clinking of the bottles as he carried the heavy crates up the steps to your apartment or house, a sound that promised refreshment. For many families, having a ready supply of seltzer was a household staple, as essential as milk or bread. This service was particularly popular in Jewish communities, where seltzer or seltzer Wasser was a traditional beverage, often used to make egg creams, that classic New York concoction of seltzer, milk, and chocolate syrup. Remember, no egg, no cream, or simply enjoyed plain as a palate cleanser. Food historians often note the cultural significance of seltzer in certain immigrant communities, where it represented a taste of the old country and a fixture of social gatherings. The seltzer man wasn't just a delivery person. He was often a familiar figure, someone who knew his customers and their preferences, perhaps sharing a bit of neighborhood news as he made his rounds. A quirky and rather impressive aspect of the seltzer man's job was the sheer physical strength required. Those glass bottles, when full, were incredibly heavy, and carrying multiple crates up flights of stairs was no easy feat. It was a demanding job, often passed down through families. You, accustomed to grabbing a plastic bottle of sparkling water from a refrigerated shelf at the supermarket, would be fascinated by this personalized, anachronistic delivery service. The weight of the bottle in your hand, the satisfying hiss and whoosh as you dispense the seltzer, the intense fizziness that tickles your nose. It would be a far more engaging experience than simply twisting off a cap. You'd probably try to make your own egg cream, marveling at how such simple ingredients could create such a uniquely delightful drink. It's a reminder of a time when even something as simple as a bubbly drink could be part of a cherished ritual, delivered with a personal touch, clinking its way through the streets of a now-vanished cityscape. You might even find yourself wishing for a seltzer delivery to your own door, just for the nostalgic charm of it all. While the seltzer man was delivering his refreshing cargo and teenagers were exchanging class rings, a more sobering ritual was unfolding in classrooms across 1950s America, a stark reminder of the ever-present anxieties of the Cold War. The duck and cover drill. In an era shadowed by the terrifying possibility of nuclear attack, civil defense became a national priority, and schools were on the front lines of preparing children for the unthinkable. The duck and cover drills, often accompanied by films featuring Bert the Turtle, a friendly cartoon character who advised children to duck and cover, like he did in his shell, became a routine part of school life for millions of American students in the 1950s. The premise was simple, if chillingly inadequate. In the event of a sudden bright flash, signifying a nuclear detonation, children were instructed to immediately drop to the floor, either under their desks or against an interior wall, and cover their heads and necks with their arms. Imagine the scene. You're in a classroom, perhaps struggling with long division or diagramming a sentence, when suddenly a special alarm bell rings or the teacher gives a calm but firm command. Instantly, you and your classmates scramble out of your seats, crawling under your sturdy wooden desks, curling into a ball, hands clasped behind your necks. You'd stay there in the cramped, dusty space until the all-clear signal was given. These drills were practiced regularly with a grim seriousness. Teachers would walk the aisles, ensuring everyone was in the correct position, offering quiet words of instruction. Outside the classroom, similar drills were being practiced in offices, factories, and public buildings. The goal was to instill an automatic, reflexive response, a desperate hope that some small measure of protection could be found even in the face of unimaginable devastation. The psychological impact of these drills on a generation of children is a subject historians and psychologists continue to explore. Did they provide a sense of empowerment and preparedness, however illusory, or did they primarily instill fear and anxiety about a constant, invisible threat? For many who grew up in this era, the memory of huddling under their desks, the image of Bert the Turtle, and the ominous wail of air raid sirens, which were also tested regularly in many communities, are indelibly etched in their minds. It was a strange juxtaposition, the innocent world of childhood games and lessons, punctuated by these terrifying rehearsals for annihilation. A quirky and rather poignant element associated with civil defense was the distribution of metal dog tags to some schoolchildren. Similar to military identification tags, these were meant to help identify children in the event of a catastrophic attack. The idea that such a measure was considered necessary speaks volumes about the pervasive fear of the era. You, with your knowledge of the actual destructive power of nuclear weapons, would find these drills almost unbearably tragic in their naivety. The image of small children dutifully practicing a maneuver that would offer virtually no protection against a nuclear blast is heartbreaking. Yet you would also sense the earnestness, the desperate attempt by adults to do something, to provide some semblance of control and safety in a world that suddenly felt terrifyingly precarious. It's a sobering reminder that beneath the sunny optimism and booming prosperity of the 1950s, there lurked a profound and ever-present shadow of fear, a fear that shaped not only foreign policy, but also the daily routines of school children across the nation. You'd probably want to give Bert the Turtle a very long, very sad hug. Emerging from the chilling shadow of duck and cover drills, let's turn our attention to a more constructive and empowering aspect of 1950s American life, the burgeoning do-it-yourself, the DIY movement. In an era of expanding home ownership, particularly in the new suburbs, and a general spirit of post-war ingenuity and self-reliance, many Americans embraced the challenge of building, repairing, and improving their own homes and gadgets. This wasn't just about saving money, It was also about a sense of accomplishment, a pride in craftsmanship, and the sheer satisfaction of understanding how things worked. And a key enabler of this movement for electronics enthusiasts was companies like Heathkit, which sold a vast array of electronic kits that you could assemble yourself, from radios and amplifiers to oscilloscopes and amateur radio equipment. The popularity of Heathkits and similar DIY electronic projects in the 1950s reflected a growing interest in technology, a desire for hands-on learning, and the availability of affordable components for hobbyists. Imagine your 1950s counterpart, perhaps your father or uncle, hunched over a workbench in the garage or basement, a soldering iron in hand, surrounded by a complex schematic diagram, a pile of resistors, capacitors, vacuum tubes, and wires. They are meticulously assembling a new shortwave radio or a high-fidelity amplifier, carefully following the step-by-step instructions. This was a hobby that required patience, precision, and a willingness to learn. The reward wasn't just the finished product, but the deep understanding gained from building it from the ground up. When that newly assembled radio finally crackled to life, picking up distant stations, or that amplifier produced rich, clear sound, the sense of triumph was immense. It was a tangible connection to the marvels of modern technology, demystified through the act of creation. But the DIY spirit extended far beyond electronics. Popular magazines like Popular Mechanics and Mechanics Illustrated were filled with plans and instructions for building everything from furniture and home additions to go-karts and backyard bomb shelters. Tying back to those Cold War anxieties, hardware stores became havens for the home handyman, offering a vast array of tools, lumber, and supplies. Homeowners learned to tackle plumbing repairs, paint their own houses, build patios, and install new linoleum flooring. There was a can-do attitude, a belief that with the right tools and a bit of know-how, almost anything was achievable. Social historians often note the rise of the DIY ethos in the 1950s as a reflection of increased leisure time for some, the desire to personalize suburban tract homes, and a cultural emphasis on self-sufficiency and practical skills. It was a way to make your mark, to improve your surroundings, and to engage in productive, satisfying labor outside of one's formal employment. A quirky and sometimes frustrating aspect of DIY projects was the inevitable, some assembly required tagline on purchased goods, which often translated to hours of deciphering vague instructions and wrestling with ill-fitting parts. Many a weekend was spent in a state of mild exasperation, surrounded by a confusing array of screws, bolts, and mysterious components. Yet the eventual victory of assembling that new barbecue grill or bookshelf was all the sweeter for the struggle. You, perhaps more accustomed to ready-made products or calling a professional for repairs, would be impressed by the level of practical skill and technical knowledge that many average Joes and Janes possessed. The ability to diagnose a faulty vacuum tube, to properly solder a connection, or to build a sturdy set of shelves was a valuable asset. It's a reminder of a time when making was as important as consuming, and when the inner workings of the machines that shaped daily life were not quite so opaque or out of reach. You'd probably feel a sudden urge to find an old Heathkit on eBay, just to see if you could still follow a schematic. While dedicated hobbyists were meticulously soldering Heathkits in their basements, another auditory revolution was quietly taking place in the living rooms of discerning 1950s audiophiles, the dawn of high fidelity, or hi-fi sound. For years, home audio had been dominated by console radios and record players that, while often beautifully crafted pieces of furniture, delivered sound that was, well, adequate, but not exactly immersive or true to life. But in the 1950s, advancements in recording technology, amplification, Hello vacuum tubes, and loudspeaker design led to a new quest for sonic perfection. Enthusiasts began assembling component hi-fi systems, a separate turntable, tuner, preamplifier, power amplifier, and one or more large, high-quality loudspeakers, all carefully chosen and matched to achieve the most realistic and detailed sound reproduction possible. The emergence of hi-fi as a serious hobby and consumer category in the 1950s transformed how people listened to music at home, fostering a new appreciation for audio quality and recording techniques. It wasn't just about hearing the tune. It was about hearing the breath of the singer, the scrape of the rosin on a violin bow, the precise thud of a kettle drum. Imagine stepping into a 1950s living room where a brand new hi-fi system holds pride of place. The components might be housed in a custom-built wooden cabinet, or perhaps displayed proudly on open shelves. The turntable, a precision instrument, gently lowers a diamond stylus onto a new long-playing LP record. Another key innovation that allowed for longer stretches of uninterrupted music. And then, the sound. It would be richer, fuller, with a wider dynamic range and clearer highs and lows than anything previously heard in most homes. Classical music enthusiasts could hear the full sweep of an orchestra. Jazz fans could appreciate the nuances of a saxophone solo. And fans of popular vocalists like Frank Sinatra or Ella Fitzgerald could feel as if the singer were right there in the room. Special demonstration records were produced, featuring everything from roaring locomotives and ping-pong games to full orchestral pieces, all designed to show off the capabilities of these new hi-fi systems. One popular joke was that a true hi-fi bug would spend more time listening to his equipment than to the actual music. This pursuit of audio perfection became a passionate, sometimes obsessive hobby. Magazines like High Fidelity and Audio catered to this growing market, filled with technical articles, equipment reviews, and debates about the merits of different components. Enthusiasts would spend hours tweaking their systems, experimenting with speaker placement, and comparing notes with fellow audiophiles. Sound engineers and record producers also began to pay more attention to the quality of their recordings, knowing that a growing segment of the public could now appreciate and critique their work with unprecedented clarity. This led to advancements in studio techniques and a greater emphasis on capturing a natural, well-balanced sound. A quirky and sometimes visually striking aspect of early hi-fi was the sheer size of some of the loudspeakers. To reproduce deep bass frequencies accurately, these speakers often needed large cabinets, sometimes taking up a significant portion of a living room wall. They were a statement piece, a testament to the owner's dedication to sonic purity. You, accustomed to tiny earbuds or sleek soundbars that deliver surprisingly big sound, would be astounded by the physical presence of these audio behemoths. The warm glow of the vacuum tubes in the amplifier, the careful ritual of cleaning a record before playing it, the intense, focused listening. It would be a far more deliberate and immersive way of experiencing music than simply hitting play on a streaming service. You'd probably find yourself sitting in the sweet spot between the two large speakers, eyes closed, truly listening in a way you perhaps haven't in years. It's a reminder that technology can not only make things more convenient, but also sometimes more profound. While hi-fi systems were bringing the concert hall into the living room, another mode of travel was offering a more leisurely and arguably more romantic way to experience the vastness of the American landscape: the long-distance passenger train. Although air travel was on the rise and automobiles were becoming ubiquitous, the 1950s still represented a significant era for train travel, particularly for longer journeys. Before the full development of the interstate highway system and the dominance of jet airliners, railroads like the Pennsylvania Railroad, the New York Central, the Santa Fe, and the Union Pacific operated extensive networks of passenger trains, connecting cities and towns across the continent. These weren't just commuter trains. These were an experience, often featuring comfortable Pullman sleeper cars, elegant dining cars, and scenic dome cars that offered panoramic views. The continued importance of long-distance passenger rail in the 1950s, even as it faced growing competition, provided a unique and often cherished mode of travel for many Americans, characterized by a slower pace and a greater connection to the passing landscape. Imagine settling into a plush seat in a spacious coach or a private compartment on a train like the California Zephyr or the Super Chief. The gentle rocking motion of the train, the rhythmic clackety-clack of the wheels on the rails, the mournful cry of the train whistle in the distance. These were the soothing sounds of a journey unfolding at a human pace. You could watch the countryside slide by your window, from bustling cityscapes to rolling farmland, majestic mountains, and wide-open plains. Unlike the blur of highway travel or the detached view from 30,000 feet, train travel offered an intimate connection to the land. Meals in the dining car were an event, with white tablecloths, proper silverware, and freshly prepared food served by uniformed waiters. You might strike up a conversation with fellow passengers, sharing stories and destinations. In the evening, you could retire to your sleeper berth, lulled to sleep by the motion of the train, and wake up to a new vista outside your window. This mode of travel fostered a different sense of time and distance. A cross-country trip could take several days, allowing for a gradual acclimatization to changing landscapes and time zones. It was a journey to be savored, not just endured. Railway historians often look back at the 1950s as a kind of silver age for American passenger trains, a period when service standards were still relatively high and the romance of rail travel was still potent, even as the seeds of its decline were being sown by new transportation technologies and changing travel patterns. The iconic streamlined diesel locomotives of the era, with their gleaming stainless steel or brightly painted liveries, were symbols of power and progress, yet also hark back to an earlier, perhaps more gracious, mode of travel. A quirky and often fondly remembered feature of many long-distance trains was the dome car. This was a special car with a raised, glass-enclosed upper level, offering passengers unobstructed, panoramic views of the scenery. Sitting in a dome car as the train wound its way through a mountain pass or across a scenic river valley was an unforgettable experience. You, accustomed to the hustle and stress of modern airports or the monotony of highway driving, would find the unhurried pace and civilized comforts of 1950s train travel a revelation. The ability to walk around, to socialize in a lounge car, to enjoy a proper meal while the world glides by, it would feel like a journey from a more elegant, less frantic time. You'd probably spend hours just gazing out the window, lost in thought, feeling the vastness of the continent unfold before you, a traveler in a land of endless horizons. It's a reminder that sometimes the most rewarding journeys are not about speed, but about the experience itself. As the rhythmic clatter of the long-distance train fades into a gentle memory, let's return to the heart of the 1950s American home, to a time when family entertainment often revolved around a beloved, and sometimes slightly out of tune, instrument, the living room piano. In an era before every room had a screen and every individual had a personal playlist, the piano was a central fixture in many households, a source of music, a catalyst for sing-alongs, and a symbol of middle-class cultural aspiration. Many children took piano lessons, dutifully practicing their scales and sonatinas under the watchful eye of a local piano teacher. And even if no one in the family was a virtuoso, someone usually knew enough chords to accompany a group sing-along of popular tunes, folk songs, or holiday carols. The prevalence of pianos in American homes and their role as a focal point for family entertainment and amateur music making was a significant cultural feature of the mid-20th century, before being gradually supplanted by other forms of home entertainment like television and sophisticated stereo systems. Imagine a 1950s living room on a quiet evening or a Sunday afternoon. Perhaps after dinner, the family gathers around the upright or spinet piano. Mom or an older sibling might be at the keyboard, sheet music propped up, leading the family in a rendition of Home on the Range, You Are My Sunshine, or a current hit by Perry Como or Doris Day. Voices, some more tuneful than others, would blend in harmony or enthusiastic disharmony, filling the room with a warmth and camaraderie that was uniquely of its time. These weren't polished performances. They were about participation, about the joy of making music together. Guests visiting the home might also be invited to play or sing, turning a casual visit into an impromptu musical gathering. This was social media, 1950s style, shared, live, and entirely analog. The piano itself was often a significant piece of furniture, a symbol of stability and culture. Learning to play was considered a valuable accomplishment, part of a well-rounded education. Music educators and social commentators of the era often emphasized the benefits of musical training for children, believing it fostered discipline, creativity, and an appreciation for the arts. While the quality of these home performances undoubtedly varied wildly, the act of gathering to make music together was a powerful bonding experience. A quirky and often charming aspect of this home music culture was the popularity of song folios and sheet music for popular songs. You could buy the sheet music for the latest hit single from the radio or a Broadway show and then try to recreate it at home on your piano. These often featured simplified arrangements suitable for amateur players. You, perhaps more accustomed to instantly accessing any song imaginable via a streaming service, would be struck by the effort and engagement required to bring music into the home. The tactile experience of sheet music, the challenge of deciphering notes and chords, the collaborative effort of a family sing-along. It would be a far more active and participatory way of engaging with music. You'd probably find yourself humming along, maybe even attempting a harmony, caught up in the simple, unpretentious joy of a living room concert. It's a reminder of a time when entertainment wasn't just passively consumed, but actively created, note by sometimes wobbly note. While families were harmonizing around the living room piano, a different kind of creative energy was being unleashed in the playrooms and backyards of 1950s America, fueled by a new generation of iconic and often delightfully quirky toys. This was an era of burgeoning post-war prosperity and a growing focus on childhood, leading to a boom in the toy industry and the introduction of playthings that would become enduring classics. Forget complex electronics or app-connected gadgets. These were toys that often relied on simple mechanics, imagination, and a healthy dose of novelty. And two of the breakout stars of the 1950s toy scene were Mr. Potato Head and the Slinky. Mr. Potato Head, first introduced in 1952, was revolutionary because it was the first toy advertised on television and initially consisted only of a set of plastic facial features and body parts that children would stick into a real potato or other vegetable. This encouraged creativity and a playful interaction with everyday objects. Later, a plastic potato body was included, but the initial concept was charmingly lo-fi. Imagine a child in the 1950s gleefully transforming a humble spud into a comical character with googly eyes, a bright red nose, and a jaunty hat. The possibilities were endless, limited only by imagination and the supply of potatoes. It was a toy that was both silly and surprisingly engaging, allowing for endless combinations and storytelling. Then there was the Slinky, that mesmerizing coil of wire invented by naval engineer Richard T. James in the 1940s. but truly taking off in popularity in the 1950s. Its ability to walk downstairs one end over the other with that distinctive slinkety-slink sound was almost magical. Kids would spend hours experimenting with it, watching its hypnotic motion, trying to get it to perform ever more elaborate descents. It was a triumph of simple physics and captivating design. But the 1950s toy box was filled with other treasures too. Hula hoops became a massive, if short-lived, international craze in the late 1950s, with children and adults twirling plastic hoops around their waists, necks, and limbs with varying degrees of skill. Play-Doh, originally a wallpaper cleaner, was repurposed and remarketed as a modeling compound in the mid-50s, its soft texture and bright colors making it an instant hit. Tonka trucks, sturdy metal replicas of construction vehicles, were built to withstand the rigors of sandbox excavation. And Barbie dolls made their debut at the very end of the decade in 1959, heralding a new era in fashion doll play. Toy historians often view the 1950s as a pivotal decade, marking a shift towards mass-produced, heavily marketed toys that reflected and shaped children's aspirations and play patterns. A quirky and somewhat bizarre toy fad from the early 1950s was ant farms, clear plastic containers filled with sand that allowed children to observe the complex tunnel-digging activities of a live ant colony. It was a miniature lesson in biology and social structures, and perhaps a slightly unsettling form of home entertainment. You, perhaps accustomed to toys with batteries, screens, and instruction manuals thicker than a phone book, would be charmed by the ingenuity and simplicity of these 1950s classics. The way Mr. Potato Head encouraged imaginative interaction with an ordinary vegetable, or the Slinky's captivating movement born from a simple spring. It was a different kind of play, often more open-ended and reliant on the child's own creativity. You'd probably find yourself itching to try and make a slinky walk down an imaginary staircase just to hear that satisfying slink. It's a reminder that the best toys aren't always the most complicated, but the ones that spark wonder and invite you to play. As our deep dive into the myriad nostalgic corners of 1950s America draws to a close, let's consider one final, uniquely mid-century phenomenon that touched millions of households, turning everyday shopping into a quest for colorful, sticky treasures: the trading stamp. Companies like Sperry and Hutchinson S&H Green Stamps, Gold Bond, or Top Value distributed these small gummed stamps to customers at participating retailers, grocery stores, gas stations, department stores, with purchases. Shoppers would diligently collect these stamps, pasting them into special saver books. Once a book, or several books, were filled, they could be redeemed for a vast array of merchandise from a catalog or a dedicated redemption center. The trading stamp craze reached its zenith in the 1950s and early 1960s, becoming a powerful loyalty program and a significant part of the American consumer landscape, essentially a precursor to modern rewards points and cashback schemes. It was a national obsession for many. Imagine your 1950s homemaker carefully tearing out a string of S&H Green Stamps at the grocery checkout, the number of stamps received depending on the amount spent. At home, there would be the ritual of licking the back of each stamp, or using a little sponge moistener, and meticulously pasting it into the designated squares in the saver book. It required patience and organization. Filling a book was a minor triumph. Filling enough books to redeem for a desired item, a new toaster, a set of towels, a Sunbeam Mixmaster, or even larger items like furniture or bicycles, was a major accomplishment. The S&H Idea Book Catalog, a glossy publication showcasing all the available merchandise, became a wish book for many families, pored over and debated. How many books for the electric blanket, dear? This system fostered intense loyalty to participating merchants. Shoppers would often go out of their way or choose one store over another based on which one gave out their preferred brand of trading stamps. It became a form of currency, a way to acquire free goods through regular household spending. Economists and social critics of the time debated the true value and impact of trading stamps, whether they genuinely benefited consumers or simply inflated prices to cover their cost, and whether they encouraged thrift or merely fueled consumerism. Were they a clever marketing gimmick or a real boon for budget-conscious families? The answer, as always, is likely complex. A quirky and often highly competitive aspect of trading stamps was the occasional double stamp day or special promotions where retailers would offer extra stamps to attract customers. These could create a frenzy of shopping. You might also see informal stamp swapping among friends and neighbors to help each other complete books for a particularly coveted item. You, accustomed to digital loyalty programs and instant online redemptions, would find this tangible, sticky, and time-consuming system both fascinating and slightly bewildering. The sheer effort of collecting, licking, pasting, and saving. It was a commitment. Yet there was also a certain charm to it, a sense of working towards a tangible reward. The redemption centers themselves were often bustling places, filled with hopeful shoppers turning in their hard-earned books. It's a potent reminder of a different era of consumer culture, one built on patience, perseverance, and the satisfying stickiness of a million tiny stamps. Each one a small step towards a desired household treasure. You'd probably find yourself wondering just how many licks it took to get that shiny new percolator. The whir of the automatic washer, the shared secrets of the party line, the flickering glow of the test pattern, the polite guidance of the elevator operator, the intricate landscapes of the model railroad, the itchy memory of calamine lotion, the weight of a class ring, the refreshing hiss of the seltzer bottle, the chilling command to duck and cover, the satisfaction of a completed Heathkit, the rich sound of a hi-fi system, the rhythmic clatter of a long-distance train, the blended voices of a living room sing-along, the simple joy of a slinky, and the diligent collection of green stamps. These are the threads we've woven together tonight. Each one a small, distinct piece of the vast, complex, and endlessly fascinating tapestry of 1950s America. As these images and sensations begin to soften, to recede like the last notes of a favorite song from that old living room piano, allow the unique rhythms of that era to gently guide you towards rest. The earnest endeavors, the simple innovations, the communal rituals, and even the underlying anxieties, they all played their part in shaping a world that now feels both distant and strangely familiar. The need for constant connection, for instant information, for ever faster speeds can fall away, replaced by the imagined quiet of a world that moved at a more deliberate, more human pace. Let the memory of those hand-built model train empires inspire dreams of creativity. Let the thought of a family gathered for a sing-along bring a sense of warmth, and let the satisfying clink of seltzer bottles be a soothing, repetitive sound. The challenges of that time, the illnesses before vaccines, the fears of the Cold War, are now just echoes, unable to disturb your peace. There are no more party lines to navigate, no more civil defense drills to endure, no more stamps to lick and paste. There is only the stillness of this moment, the comfort of your bed, and the gentle invitation to let go. The world of the 1950s, with all its quirks and its quiet revolutions, has offered its stories. Now allow yourself to drift into a deep, serene, and profoundly restful sleep, carrying with you the faint, sweet scent of a bygone era. Sweet dreams.